So the signs are illegal, but the fence isn't. So the fence isn't. So the fence is illegal, but the fence is legal. The signs aren't. The First Amendment's not legal, but walking the road is. Boy, you guys are so pieces of shit. You guys are so ignorant. Ignorant. You couldn't hold a job if you had to. You're American. The only thing American about you is the shit. You're a asshole. I'm 77. I worked for 45 years. What I job, you asshole. You're an asshole. You're a cunt lip. Why don't you guys go back there and start sucking? Leave us alone and go back and start sucking your again. You pieces of shit. You're fucking assholes. You're a fucking piece of shit asshole. Nothing but assholes. Nothing but. Look at that. Oh yeah, look at this. You got. I got a fence to block me. I got a fence. Watch out. Oh. What's that? Oh, am I scared now? I'm scared? Oh. You're the one that's afraid. You're the one that put the fucking fence up.
For everyone's safety, you guys have a fence.
Everybody's safety. Yeah. Who's causing all this shit? Bull. Yeah, signs and songs. Signs and songs. That's the problem around here. People have signs and songs. Yeah. You asshole.
Are you researching dental implants?
There's a lot of dental offices that'll talk about doing their teeth in the day process.
You get out! Get out of the front! Come on, bring them up to people! That make you feel big and tall?
Before you push them. So try it after a couple minutes. We'll walk around and make sure everybody's feeling fit.
Yeah, give it to me. I know, but I can take it. Oh, I gotta get lower. So much strength, but I stayed up with this. That's the point, right? I hate immigrants. I love Nazis. Fascism is great. The brown people bother me.
Who's coming to this country, and then they come to this country, and a generation later they shouldn't forget that they also came to this country, or their grandparents came to this country, and they talk about the right way of coming in when it was a high five on Ellis Island as opposed to waiting 20 years to get citizenship. Also, by the way, everyone doesn't get the same treatment. Depending on the level of melanin in your skin, it's either easier or harder to get into this country. So let's talk about the reality. You want to know why this country isn't winning? Because they worry more about dollars and profit than they do about people. It is what keeps people broke. It is why they put up borders and pay people 10 cents to build you iPhones and charge you $1,000 for them. That's the system we're fighting against. So we all know we're here on the right side of history. At the end of the day, we say no honor in this mission. No honor in this mission. From fascist politicians. From fascist politicians. Join us, change your position. Join us, change your position. Fight for humane conditions. Fight for humane conditions. We'll all back your decision. We'll all back your decision. We'll build our coalition. We'll build our coalition. To stop this imposition. To stop this imposition. And fight for abolition. And fight for abolition.
Remember earlier, lock your hands, touch your thumbs, stay together. Don't let folks get taken.
Yes, yes.
If they come.
Yeah.
They love the public. We're not legal without our flag. They want us to leave before we get them out.
And next week there'll be more. We shall not be moved. We shall not be moved, just like a tree that's planted by the water.
Found out that my heart was beating at 175 beats per minute and had been for 3 weeks. I'm drinking 6 to 7 cups of coffee every day. I remember asking my doctor what I should do. With your condition, you really can't consume more than 80 milligrams of caffeine a day. And I, like a true addict, there is no way I can get through my day
Clashes are continuing tonight between federal agents and protesters outside of the Broadview ICE processing facility. Victor Jacoba has been out there since this afternoon. And Victor, in the last hour, you and other journalists and protesters were actually tear gassed?
Yeah, that's right, Dave. That moment where federal agents dispersed the entire crowd using tear gas and less lethal projectiles happened just before 8:40 this evening. When that happened, they moved the perimeter from that fence that's in front of the processing facility to where we're at right now at the intersection of Lexington and Beach. I'm going to step out of frame so you can see the situation, what it looks like right now. You can see that federal agents continue to maintain their position right now, as well as protesters holding their spot where they are right now. And this evening really escalated once federal agents would move beyond that fence into the street, prompting those confrontations with protesters and that moment where the tear gas was dispersed. Since then, also, multiple people have been detained by federal agents.
Give them no reason.
All pedestrians will move outside the road, or you'll be arrested for impeding.
Customs and Border Patrol Commander at Large Greg Bovino on the ground in Broadview,
Arrested for impeding. Let's move them out.
where he led federal agents multiple times in opening the gates of the fence outside the ICE processing facility and marching into the crowd of protesters. Bovino spearheaded aggressive immigration enforcement tactics in Los Angeles before arriving in Chicago earlier this month. Multiple people were detained, with instances of agents taking people into custody and confiscating different items continuing into the evening. At one point, agents cleared the crowd with pepper bullets and tear gas, which also enveloped us in one of the most aggressive confrontations in the western suburb. We're still working to learn exactly how many people were detained throughout this evening, and we'll continue to update that and monitor the situation as it develops. We're now reporting live in Broadview. Victor Jacobo, CBS News, Chicago.
All right, Victor, you and the crew stay safe out there tonight. In other news, Governor J.B. Pritzker reacting to the federal deployment in Broadview, releasing a statement today that reads, in part, Illinois will always defend Americans' right to peacefully protest and make their voices heard. We denounce any violence against the general public, members of the media, and law enforcement or first responders.
Fire in the hole. Would this make you buy a Ridge wallet?
3 red flags: you have procrastination trauma. Red flag number 1, you're always exhausted but can't stop scrolling.
Family of this mom and kid. Okay, y'all got me. I found a video of Charlie Kirk spewing hate, and he was being racist towards a black woman. So I gotta share it, just like how I share everything else.
Unfortunately, in the black community, dads are the most absent of any community. About 2/3 of all black youth will be raised without a stable father around. And I know it's crazy, right? And that little precious angel of yours deserves to have a father around. You know, for daughters and for sons, it's different things. For a daughter, that's a father figure to look up to say that is how a man should act, and someone that I ought to one day marry, someone that will protect me from a vicious world, and someone that makes me understand what strength and not brutality looks like, what justice but not revenge looks like. To have a father figure is a silent way of forming a child to be a mature citizen. And unfortunately, as we've removed dads from families, government has come in and has taken the place. So some people need help and they need social assistance. All of that should be about incentivizing the dad staying around, not the dad leaving. Unfortunately, with welfare, you can get more money for single mother assistance.
This is very true.
And so you agree. We're actually subsidizing single motherhood more than we are subsidizing family formation. The number one objective of any social welfare program should be, how do we keep the family together and put dads back in the family? Yes. That is the number one priority.
That was the person y'all said that was racist and hated black people. I don't know about y'all, but you can't turn hate on or off. And a racist person would never call you and your family beautiful. Like, That's who y'all said hated black people. Like, I don't know, bro. Like, the more I go down this rabbit hole, the more I just get like re-pissed off all over again. Cause I just get like the videos of folks celebrating and all of that just come back in my head. And the people who were saying, I'm celebrating because he hated black people. I'm celebrating because he was racist to us. And I come across videos like that and I'm like, huh? Like, and I already know somebody gonna say that was just a clip. You contradicting yourself, because this whole time I've been preaching full context. Don't go off clips. And I just went off of a clip of him showing love to a black woman. But the point is, you cannot turn hate in your heart for somebody or for a group that y'all say on or off. If you hate a group, you're going to stand 10 toes on that. And that man showed would have stood 10 toes on something if he actually hated something. But all of a sudden in this situation, he sees this beautiful family of this mom and kid, and he's going to call them beautiful and a gift from God. And you trying to sit here and tell me that he hated black people and trying to tell me that he was racist to black people. All right.
The black churches, the filth, I mean the straight up filth, that y'all gonna actually make this into a racial issue. This man was assassinated where the whole world can see. I don't care how you feel about him. For you to try to justify is sickening. There is no, how you gonna justify that? How you gonna justify that? Then you got the audacity to try to make this man out to be a racist. Are you kidding me? These are people who call themselves Christians. These are people who call themselves prophetic voices. And you're literally getting on your platform talking about this man was a racist. This man hated black people. You are a bold-faced liar. I don't care how you feel personally. You're not going to get me to believe that Charlie Kirk did not belong to Jesus. That man is my brother in Christ. I don't care what his skin color was. I don't care what nobody's skin color is. That is so ridiculous to me. But I want y'all to know, and this is not promoting violence because I'm not doing it. But I also know we're not passive Christians. Listen, the generation of Christians that y'all used to being passive, letting stuff slide, and they want to act like, oh, we got to be nice. Christ ain't never called me to be nice. I got to love you. I got to speak the truth. And guess what? Sometimes speaking the truth don't feel good. The majority of the times, the truth don't feel good. The truth be hurting. Trust me, I know. Because I felt it. And for a person to claim they submitted to Christ, but they can't handle the truth, I really question, how submitted are you really? Because do you know how much God corrects those he loves? And it do not feel good. Y'all really swear y'all belong to Jesus. And y'all lying. A lot of y'all is employees of Satan. Y'all got these large platforms, but y'all father is the devil. I don't care how much you get on camera with your Bible. I don't care how much you quote scripture. I don't care. Your fruit is telling it all. Let me tell you something. Your choice of words, I listen to a person's choice of words. I listen to what's being said behind those words. Because sometimes people say things and you can hear the voice behind the words. You can hear the truth behind those words. Your mouth speaking from the abundance of your heart, and your heart is full of wickedness. And I can tell that by the fruit of your words. Your words is producing rotten fruit. I can see that. It doesn't matter how much you want to claim to belong to Jesus. Them fruit is showing otherwise. When you're on this digital platform, you can always say something that could be triggering or that could be considered hateful to somebody, especially if they find it to be offensive. Just because something is offensive does not mean that person is racist. Just because something is offensive does not mean that person is promoting hate. It just means it offended you. But the truth does offend people. Y'all do know that, right?
Charlie Kirk did not spread hate. Y'all just hated the truth that he spread. Y'all hated that you could not debate him and he knew his stuff. The left and many people would have you to believe that Charlie Kirk was spreading hate. No, he was gaining ground with our youth, our young people in the colleges, where they're being brainwashed. But don't get it twisted. Charlie Kirk did not spread hate. Y'all just hated the truth that he spread. Charlie Kirk was full of truth, light, and the Spirit of God.
Hey, stop playing with your fanny pack. You need the new 300...
He did not. spread hate. Jesus did not spread hate. Jesus came to preach a kingdom, and they crucified him. But just don't get it twisted. Listen to his debates. They get heated. Feelings get hurt. But everything he said, everything he debated were facts. Pure facts. A lot of them didn't go well at times because he was not an easy person to debate because he knew his stuff. And people hated him for that. But Charlie Kirk did not spread hate. Y'all just hated the truth that he was spreading. And he was gaining so much ground. And he gained so much ground. And he left legacy. He left legacy. And this is a turning point for America and the American people, the true American people. We are all Charlie Kirk. He was a voice. He was a force to reckon with. So they cowardly hid and assassinated him. But you did not kill the dream. And his legacy will live on in all patriots in America. Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk. We are Charlie Kirk.
Anybody that thinks that Charlie Kirk hated black people did not know Charlie Kirk, and I'm going to tell you exactly why. Charlie Kirk is responsible for the voices and platforms of so many black conservative commentators. You name them. If you want to talk about Terrence K. Williams, if you want to talk about David J. Harris Jr., if you want to talk about the great people that are black, if you want to talk about Brandon Tatum, if you want to talk about the great black people that are doing work in the conservative movement and that have platforms, there's a direct line to Charlie Kirk. He understood more so than I would say 98.9% of people that were in his position in the conservative movement, how powerful it was to elevate black conservative voices. And if you look at even the younger people, from Amir Odom, who did that incredible video that just went all over the internet, to Chandler Crump, to all of these younger black right-leaning influencers, they have platforms because of Charlie Kirk. And I'm going to tell you a story. Charlie Kirk is responsible for, I believe it was hundreds of young black conservatives during Trump 1.0, going to the White House and participating in, I believe it was called the Black Leadership Summit that Turning Point USA had. And you have to understand that Charlie Kirk and Turning Point USA made sure that all of these black youth, right, that were conservative leaning, that were interested in conservative movement, interested in Trump, whatever you want to call it, that they got plane tickets, that they got hotels, that they had this amazing experience. Some of these kids, and I remember being at that and talking to some of these young people, they'd never been on a plane before. They'd never been to DC before, let alone the White House. It's because of Charlie Kirk. That was his vision. And to see people pretend as if he harbored some kind of hatred for black Americans because they didn't like some things that he said, or they want to misrepresent some of the things that he said on his radio show or in speeches or whatever, is ridiculous to me. You don't judge a man by his words. You judge him by his actions. And that man took action to elevate black people in this movement. That man took action to open the eyes of younger Black people, Black Americans in this country who were interested in the conservative movement, who were interested in becoming Republican, who were interested in Trump, whatever you want to call it. That was his doing. And he was able to do that work through the vehicle that is Turning Point USA, which is so massive and so powerful, and that has been so influential to this movement and to so many people's lives and platforms and careers. So the next time you hear somebody say that Charlie Kirk was racist, that Charlie Kirk hated Black people, you point them to me, point them to Terrence Williams, point them to David J. Harris Jr., point them to Brandon Tatum, point them to any one of the hundreds of Black kids that went to the White House for the first time, that went to that Black Leadership Summit, that are employed in various capacities by him, by Turning Point USA, etc. You judge a man by his actions, and there is no way that you can look at the actions of Charlie Kirk and think that that man hated Black people.
Get 30 protein sticks for just $36. That's only $1.20 each. Here are 3 reasons.
So I just finished watching a couple of videos of a couple of pastors, Black pastors here in America, one by the name of Pastor Wesley, another by the name of Pastor Jamal Bryant, who both spake regarding the Charlie Kirk assassination, stating that he did not deserve to be assassinated, but he also did not deserve to be honored, because according to them, he was a racist and he lived his life sowing seeds of division, etc., etc. Let me just say this, because when it comes down to the church, in my opinion, the reason why the world is in the state that it is in right now, where you have all of these lies, all of these murders, all of this destruction going on, is because the church is out of order. When you have ministers that won't even preach the word of God straight up, no chaser, okay? We don't need no mixture in this. We need it straight like God said. He said, don't add to it, don't take from it. When he said that a man is a man, he created he, him, that's what he meant, okay? When you have pastors that won't address how the rainbow is being misrepresented, when it was a covenant that God used for his people, but they want to keep up this racial rhetoric, this racial division, keep this going on, when you know that when we get to that end mark, it ain't going to be no one particular race in both places. It's going to be a mixture of all of us in both places. So we have to deal with the reality of what's going on. And it's not about race. It's spiritual. If you could say this man is a racist, but you can't even name what he said. This man went around on college campuses speaking to the youth who the enemy is after. The enemy is after the seed. Okay, he don't want anything that looks like God. He don't want anything that reproduces to reproduce that looks like God. Meaning that God said man and woman come together. Okay, that's how he keeps his creation going on. But the world says, no, we want men with men, we want women with women. God said, okay, that truth is truth, right is right, wrong is wrong. But the world says, no, it's okay to have a little white lie. It's a little, just a little. No. Tell it like it is. Straight up, no chaser. And if a man can draw people to Christ, and a man is talking about Christ, okay, from what I heard this past Sunday, more people went to church than they did on Easter Sunday, reportedly, across the world, the globe. Okay, so if he's representing like that, and all you can do is say somebody is a racist and say something and keep this stuff up, because you really can't teach the true word of God, because a lot of y'all are getting government assistance, and the government tell you what you can and cannot preach about. And that's the reason why the church is in the state that it's in, because you have a lot of ignorant, Black people, I have to say, that don't do research. All they have to hear is the word racist, and they're willing to go along with it. But then you wonder why you're still in the same state that you're in, because you're promoting a party that has been behind anti-Christ policies. Now look up the word of God and see what he has to say about marriage, okay? Look up the word of God and see what he has to say about truth when you have all these lies being spread in the lying, lamestream media. And you will see who's representing God and who's not. None of us are perfect. But at the same time, you can't call yourself a Christian and don't see that the same party that you are speaking for has been behind anti-Christ policies, while the one that you're speaking against is the one that's actually promoting Christ-like policy.
Charlie Kirk was not racist. Charlie Kirk's goal for black people is to get out of the oppression mindset. Do y'all know that accepting oppression into your life is a word curse? A word curse. There's life and death on our tongue. When you choose to accept that you are oppressed, you are welcoming poverty and all the things that are not of God in your life. When you claim that you are a Christian, but yet you're following leaders who are marching around these streets saying, oh, democracy this and democracy that, we are the oppressed people. You are literally following the opposite of what God teaches in the Bible. The Lord freed us from oppression. That's the doctrine that I follow. Those are the words that I follow. Those are the words that Charlie Kirk also followed when he was here. Amen. So many of us black people choose to glamorize victimhood. I'm a victim of this, I'm a victim of that, but you don't want to accept accountability for anything that you do in your own life. Everything is everyone else's fault, but not your own. Charlie Kirk's message to black people was for us to be better. A lot of us actually have more, actually are doing well, but we are brainwashed and allowing these political leaders to tell us how we should think. Think about that. That's nonsense. The devil is a liar. Like, for real, y'all. Seriously. I have said this before. When you do your research on political parties, you're going to know who you should follow and who you should not follow. I am an independent because I choose to be underneath the covenant of the Heavenly Father. Amen. I'm just telling you, for those of you who are so loyal and so locked in with the Democrat Party, you don't even know that they are taking you to the land of destruction. They don't care about you. They never did. They never will. And they won't ever. They won't ever do anything for you that's going to benefit you. They only do things to benefit them. Literally. Black man, black woman, black people, you are not oppressed. You are beautiful. You can do anything and everything that you want to do. Anything and everything that you want to put your mind to, you can do it. You have the same opportunity as the next man who is not the same race as you. You have the same opportunity. In fact, there are black people who have proven that you can be successful. These black activists are the examples of that. They have proven to you, they have proven to us that you can become successful, right? But will they share that success with you? No. Because they bank off of your victimness. They bank off of you having the victim mentality. Forgive me for saying that word victimist, because I know that's not a word. But y'all get my point. They make money off of us feeling down and low. Feeling like we need them to be the voice for the people. Wake up, y'all. That's all Charlie Kirk was doing for us. Wake up. These black activists, ain't it? They want you to stay down because they make money off of you. They're using you. You're not oppressed. You're not. And the moment you all realize that, you're going to have so much freedom. You're going to have so much freedom. And the moment you start walking in that freedom, that's when you become a threat to democracy. Because we're not living in democracy. We're living underneath republic. That's why we're able to do all the things that we're able to do. But y'all understand this, my fellow black men and women. You are not oppressed people. We are free. We live in a free country. It is time for us to believe in that thing. Amen and amen.
We don't serve the same God. You don't serve the same God as me. Anytime you can get online and celebrate the death of a man who gave his unsolicited opinion just like you do. To fix your mouth and make jokes about this man losing his life. This man was a husband. This man was a father. But to sit up and laugh and make jokes about it when you do exactly the same thing that he does, which is give your unsolicited opinion that nobody asked you for, there's somebody out there that don't like you either. There's somebody out there that don't like your opinions. There's somebody out there who would do the very same thing to you. So to sit up and laugh at somebody who only gave their opinion, regardless of if you agree with it or not, thinking that it's okay for somebody to take that person's life and sit up and laugh about that, you don't serve the same God that I serve.
In the next 30 seconds, I'll show you how to balance your sugar levels in a simple and natural way. 7 out of 10 Americans have high glucose levels, and less than 1% even know it. The real culprit behind all of this isn't sugar or carbs, but a bacterial plaque that forms in the liver, blocking the connection between beta cells and insulin. These bacteria are what's responsible for the fatigue, the excessive hunger, the constant trips to the bathroom, and the tingling in your hands and feet. But the good news is, a 2024 study by independent scientists in California shows that this bacteria is very fragile and that a simple recipe made from a native desert plant can...
A lot of y'all wonder why y'all life is so messed up and why you have the problems that you have. It's because you ain't got no God in you. You don't serve a higher power, and it shows. A lot of y'all are demonic. You have some evil spirits. I never listened to Charlie Kirk like that. I would see his stuff come across my timeline every now and then with his controversial takes, but I've never seen anything that he's personally done to justify somebody doing this to him. There's nothing to justify doing this to this man, regardless if you agree with his opinion or not. My prayers go out to his family. This is just a messed up situation, but it goes to show you just how far people will go when they don't like what you're saying.
I'm Jakari. I'm Caleb. And I'm Brandon. And as the people of the youth, we've decided to come up and give our perspective on the subject, considering it is our teacher and one of the people that will guide our futures. No matter what anyone says to me, I will never stand for violence, especially of a man who was publicly murdered in front of his wife, one of his children, thousands of students, and other bystanders. Charlie was not a racist, he did not hurt anyone sexually, and he did not kill anyone. Therefore, this was an unjustified cause of death that should never be celebrated. So if you ask me, Charlie's children do not deserve to grow up without their father. Charlie's wife did not deserve to lose her husband. Charlie did not deserve to lose his life because of a different opinion. But this teacher deserves to lose his job. As civilians and people of our great country, we hold ourselves to a higher standard than to support, or worse yet, rejoice in violence. Someone who advocated for an arrested murderer and assassinator of one of the greatest debaters and free speakers of our time should have no place in the classroom, more so around young children.
As a student of Barrington High, I did not feel comfortable or safe with one of our teachers supporting violence. We believe this world needs God because something as cruel as this should never be celebrated. God bless Charlie Kirk and rest in peace, Mr. Kirk.
I have a family. I can't afford to put my...
We heard shot.
Oh my gosh.
There's been a shooting.
There were gunshots. Stop, folks. Stop.
Charlie Kirk was shot dead.
On the rooftop is the figure of the assassin.
They always come with violence.
I think he deserved it.
The number one lesson the church should have wanted people to get out of this was very simply, this was tragic, wicked, and it never should have happened. No one deserves to get killed for expressing their opinion. And unfortunately, I think a lot of people on the left said that, but then they said but real quick.
Donald Trump was accused of treason. He was impeached twice. He had his home raided. And then now, a young, charismatic general from his movement is assassinated. They view this as deeper than toxic rhetoric. Livelihoods are at stake here.
It seemed like every Christian was like, hey, you have to say something about this. You were so vocal about George Floyd. You were so vocal about all these people. Why are you not vocal about Charlie Kirk?
Introducing our cutting-edge Smart Zoom reading glasses, co-developed by NASA engineers. No eye exam needed.
You create a company close to being a fascist. That's all it is.
Can you name one thing I believe that's fascist?
You believe that, like, you are...
One of the worst things you could call somebody is a fascist. Most people couldn't define it if you gave it to them. But again, words have meanings. The way that you're provoking people has consequences. The ideas that you put out into the public square have consequences. The last tweet I sent out about Charlie Kirk, probably in July, was basically saying something he said was racist.
We haven't really grappled with the goals of political violence, which I think is it's to make you say, I have children, I have a family. I can't afford to put myself out there that way. If nothing else happened but the image of Charlie Kirk being assassinated, the assassin achieved its goal.
I do think that the right, in some instances, was very opportunistic. The left caused this. Mm-hmm. They're completely to blame for this.
I mean, there were opportunists out there, but
very, very, very polarizing views on Charlie's death on the left and the right. People say he's a martyr for the Christian faith. On the opposite side, I've heard people cheering for his death, saying this is what he deserved. With views like this on the sides being the most highlighted vantage points, what's a healthy perspective?
I'm glad you brought that up because
this is The Deep End with Lecrae.
Well, unless you have just unattached yourself from the news, from social media, from any type of media, you know about the brutal and horrific assassination of Charlie Kirk. It has permeated our timelines, our worlds, and information about him, regardless of your perspective on him, has been made available everywhere. I personally was not very aware of all who Charlie Kirk was. I did know of him, and I'd seen a couple of his clips, but my algorithm did not feed me a lot of information about him. And I was taken aback, after his murder, not simply because someone was murdered, but in the way in which it happened and the motive and the implications and the impact. And I've been even more taken aback in the coming days, in the days after, because I've just not been able to process the level of division and polarity that exists in light of his death. And so it's been a lot for me to process. And, I didn't want to make a premature statement and say, oh, I know what this is, and this is this, and this is that. I really wanted to take some time to process and to hear from people who were candidly much smarter than me, and more informed than I am. And so I also wanted civil conversation. So, having two people who've been here before who were able to discuss polarizing issues, specifically politics, weigh in on what's going on in our society right now, I thought was very important. And so, of course, I was fortunate to get Corey Ruth and Justin Gibney back in the room. I'm very grateful for y'all answering the call. And I think people are genuinely all over the place with this one. I think Charlie was, he's been heroicized and lionized, and he's been villainized. And it's like these polar perspectives. I personally think he's a human. And, as a human, there's many facets of us, good and bad. But I'm curious, like, for both of you and whoever would like to start, like, what were your thoughts when you first heard about this, about his life being taken?
It was deep for me. I was actually ironically coming back from a conference about Christian unity, and I was on the plane. So I was going through my phone on the plane and just looking at Twitter, X or whatever. It said, at first it was saying there was a shooting, like somebody shot at him. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking through it, and then I actually see what happened, not knowing, like I couldn't figure out what was really going on. And so it hit me pretty hard. I hadn't been following him. I know a lot of people didn't know about him. That's kind of my job. I just follow thought leaders and activists just to see what everybody's talking about. Watch this show because I watch everybody's show. And the first thing that came to mind was he's not coming back to his kids. Like I go debate people who disagree with me. I've looked into the eyes of people who just hate me because of my opinion. So when he got killed because of that, it was heavy. It was heavy.
Yeah. How about you, Corey?
I mean, it was horrific and shocking. I think the initial sort of notification was a text from my son with that video that a lot of us clicked on and saw. And so it was very shocking, I think, for a lot of people. I know I engage a lot with people on the other side of the aisle. And the initial response was the same for everyone. It was, oh my gosh, this is horrific. It was just really, really shocking to see. But I also think it was, tragic in that the motive of it. I think about political violence in U.S. history. I think about people like Lincoln and Kennedy and King and X. And Charlie Kirk was not as central a figure as they are. So it was, in a weird way, close to home. And I'm thinking, gosh, I'm out a little bit. I know people, I'm very close to people who are out a lot and making stances. And, Justin talked about looking in the eyes of people who hate you because of what you believe. And so it was shockingly close to home for me. I'm like picturing in my mind the people that I know, all the way from governors down to ministers. And I'm thinking, I'm trying to picture their security footprint. I'm thinking about how often they're in a crowd of people who disagree with them. So it was shocking and it was close to home for me.
Yeah. As you mentioned, political violence, there's a study found that 40% of both Biden and Trump supporters at least somewhat believe the other side had become so extreme that it's acceptable to use violence to prevent them from achieving their goals. I'm just curious for both of you, how do you think we got here? I know there's a history of political violence, but just to a place where we think it's acceptable to where there are people not shocked, but of course, casual in their views on it. Like, how did we get here? And how do we get to a place where we're okay with murdering a person we disagree with?
I think part of it is just the culture war that's been going on for the last 50 or 60 years, right? Conservatives versus progressives. That's been ratcheting up on and on again. And then I think when you add on top of that, social media. Now we have these algorithms that are feeding us certain things. Like, we click on one thing, it's going to keep feeding us the most extreme information that we can get about the other side. Eventually you get to a point where it builds up. Then you have politicians, a few I can think of in particular, who feed off of that and feed it for their benefit. And I think people are to the point where they just feel like the other side is so bad that it's better to get rid of them than to really have to deal and be civic and go through the democratic process with them, because there's no trust on either side. And so it just builds up.
Yeah, I agree with Justin here. And I think when you look back on the American history of political violence, it often happens in those moments when we are at the apex of disagreement or division on a particular issue or set of issues. So you think Kennedy, RFK, MLK, X, it all happened in like that decade of the 60s, where this proposition of changing society, integrating society, changing the way we select the people in powerful positions by including more people into the voting process. the desperation that your side might lose, or that your cause is slipping away. I think in a population of hundreds of millions of free people, that kind of thing happens. Same thing with Lincoln. I feel like the cause is slipping away. We're at risk of losing, and that desperation will lead some true believers to go in and take matters into their own hands.
When I think
Time for dinner, kids.
The reason I gathered you here today is for a family strategy meeting. Johnny, after dinner, brush your teeth, and then you get 30 more minutes.
like the clips I've seen, and not the clips, but I've looked at long form videos of Charlie, and he's a polarizing figure, right? He's a polarizing figure. What I've noticed in the commentary, right, specifically from the right, is that a lot of people saw his views as synonymous with Christian views, to almost to the degree now where the views of the right are synonymous with the Christian perspective. And I'm curious for you specifically, Justin, as somebody who has disagreed with some things that Charlie said, has disagreed with some things on the right. What do you do as a Christian when it's perceived that the right is religiously right and the left is not? Like, how do you navigate that?
Yeah, I mean, I think anytime you're trying to navigate what Christianity represents, you go to the Bible, right? And so I would go to Amos, Jeremiah, Isaiah, and say, what were they doing in the public square, right? How did they care about people, even the ones they disagreed with? One of my issues with how Charlie conducted himself is he did have that kind of MAGA rhetoric, which is sometimes purposefully offensive, very provocative. And the question is, could he have made it to where he was without being provocative? That's another issue. It doesn't justify it, but we know that plays into it. And so I would just say, what about the gentleness of how we speak to others? Can we get our point across like we saw the civil rights, so many people in the civil rights movement do, without being so provocative? Because the way that you're provoking people has consequences. The ideas that you put out into the public square have consequences. There's even aside from the substance of what you're saying, the way that you're saying it is wrong. And I would say the substance of it, when you make certain groups feel like they're lesser, especially groups that have been suffering in this country for years, I think that does fall short of a gospel standard. But we can't prove that amongst Christians outside of really looking at it with a biblical lens.
Right.
And so looking at the Sermon on the Mount. Is that really represented in how MAGA attacks immigrants and some women and things of that nature? I don't think that it is. And so to me, that's where the conversation starts, but it needs to be a civil conversation where I'm actually listening to and engaging.
Kind of a similar question for you, Corey, but I'm curious from your vantage point, when you hear Charlie make a valid point, right? And it probably is a biblical, right? Like the point is biblical. Do you look at an opposing view, or shall I say not an opposing view, but do you look at the left as unbiblical, right? Like, because a lot of people will say, well, the right is the more moral tribe. That's what the narrative is out there. And I'm just curious for you, is there room for you to say, no, someone on the left actually can see things from the right vantage point?
For sure. I feel like the issues that are bubbling to the top, that are getting the most attention, issues around, transgenderism, issues around, sort of LGBTQ, which has of late become really more transgender athletes, transgender youth, and whether or not you can have these surgeries. I think in those instances, people could say that there are very powerful voices on the left who are not just taking a non-Christian stance on those issues, but are in fact taking a sort of deliberately anti-Christ stance on them. And like when you listen to them, they're very much anti-religion, anti-Christ. I have a friend who's on the left. And when I say left, I mean far left politically, who once said that he was not just pro-choice, he was pro-abortion. He believed that we were overpopulating the world. And he also believed that, you know, as a way to sort of moderate the amount of poverty that we have, we should reduce the amount of babies that are born in poverty. And he was saying it in very clear, very sort of provocative ways, like, you know, forget your Bible, right? These are realities that we have to deal with. So I think those voices are the loudest on the left. And so people start judging the entire left. The left that I admire is, you know, Justin Giboney. It's Howard Ford Jr. It's those people who can, you know, stand on who they are and still embrace those principles of economic principles, for instance, that have been a signature of the left, right? Where you use the power and the influence of government to expand, you know, generosity to those who are the least amongst us. I can respect those folks on the left. And so I think that where we are today, the voices that are further left than that are the ones that are being highlighted.
There are very, very, very polarizing views on Charlie's death on the left and the right, right? I've heard views on the right that have said, you know, this is the closest, if anybody should become a saint, you know, like sainthood, like the Pope, it should be Charlie Kirk. I've heard someone say, if he was walking with Jesus, he'd be the 13th disciple. I've heard that people say he's a martyr for the Christian faith. On the opposite side, I've heard people cheering for his death and saying this is what he deserved. With views like this on the sides being the most highlighted vantage points, like where do we go to, like, what's a healthy perspective in all of this? Yeah.
I would say, I think this was a moment where the church needed to have moral clarity. And I'll be honest with you, I'm disappointed in both sides and how they responded. And I'm, you know, like you said before, I'm center left on some issues. I don't find it to be my job to defend progressives because I think progressives get a lot wrong. But even if you look at it from kind of the center left of the church, I think we missed an opportunity because one of the biggest parts of moral clarity is rightly ordering and prioritizing things. And the number one lesson the church should have wanted people to get out of this was very simply, this was tragic, wicked, and it never should have happened. Our main message should have been, no one deserves to get killed for expressing their opinion. Whether it's a bad opinion or good opinion, this never should have happened. And unfortunately, I think a lot of people on the left said that, but then they said, but real quick. Now, there are people way far that were celebrating it, but that's not most. Most people weren't celebrating it. But what some folks did was like, I got to say it's wrong. So yeah, it's wrong, but let me throw my whole agenda out there. Let me make sure that my narrative is very clear. So instead of saying, pausing, sometimes you just got to put that period there and say, this was wrong. Let's sit on that for a week. Let's sit on that during my sermon. I think the problem is it got very tribal. And with tribalism, within the culture war, you got to make sure, oh, he better not get too much credit. If I let that sit too long, it might convince people he was the greatest person ever. So now I can't just say it shouldn't have happened and let people really marinate on that. I got to say, but this, but that. I got to give sermons where I'm trying to give a viral clip. That wasn't necessary. Sometimes you just got to say, as a church, sometimes you got to sit on it because that's grace. And you got to believe me sitting on the main priority, the main lesson of this is not going to make the world blow up. We would have survived if nobody had to go off on, questioning whether he was saved and naming every single thing. There's room. I'm not saying don't have that discussion. That discussion needs to be had.
Sure.
Did it need to be had immediately?
That's right.
Did it hurt the moral clarity of the moment? The last tweet I sent out about Charlie Kirk, probably in July, was basically saying something he said was racist. So I had plenty of issues with some of the things Charlie Kirk said.
Yeah.
It wasn't about me.
Yeah.
It wasn't about my narrative. It wasn't about making sure, well, man, they could actually get some points for this. You're missing the whole point. And so I think when we went from this was wrong, but so quickly, we lost the whole point. It's like if I go up to you and I'm like, man, you lied to me or you did something. You're like, yeah, I know I lied to you, but I know you didn't really process or you don't really internalize that because you said but too quickly.
That's true.
And that's exactly what I think a lot of people in church did because they were afraid based on the culture war that somehow the other side would get an advantage if they didn't express their whole agenda and narrative.
That's good.
Immediately.
Man, that's a triple. And I think we haven't really grappled with the goals of political violence, which I think is terror, disruption, and division. The goal is to terrorize us. It's to mute our voices. It's to frighten us into inaction. It's to keep good men and good women on the sidelines. Yeah. It's to make you say, I have children. I have a family. I can't afford to put myself out there that way. If nothing else happened but the image of Charlie Kirk being assassinated, the assassin achieved its goals. Disruption is where political violence has as a goal to disrupt the organization or the movement or the institution or the process. So if you think of Abraham Lincoln, the goal was, hey, we just closed a civil war. We got a country that's less than 100 years old. If we take out Abraham Lincoln,
having the anchor solix in my home gives me the confidence that
let's challenge whether America can peaceably transfer power. And that's the goal, right? If I can strike at the right place in the org chart, that I will splinter this movement. And then the final one is division. And division is the toughest one because every human relationship has division in it necessarily. I mean, I don't care how healthy your marriage is, there's some underlining fault line of division that's there that you navigate as a married couple. And the goal of political violence is to say, I'm going to aggravate that fault line and see if I can end this relationship. And so we have regenerative cells in our body that if the process of regeneration is mutated, they turn into tumors. And that's the goal, to mutate our division, the underlying division that we have. And so when we go from the next days and weeks following an act of political violence straight to what Charlie Kirk did, said, or believed, I think we mutate that process. And, after Lincoln died, after his death, they ratified the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. After Kennedy died, they pushed the landmark civil rights legislation within months. After King died, 7 days later, they pushed more landmark civil rights legislation, effectively ending Jim Crow. And so I think that was a moment to say, how can we come together? What's the unifying symbol that we can present? That's the right response, not reminding ourselves why we were divided in the first place.
Yeah, I agree with that. But I would also add, I do think, and I'd love to hear what you say about this, I do think that the right, in some instances, was very opportunistic, was very much, the left caused this. They're completely to blame for this. And they were trying to score political points based off this death, which to me is despicable as well. I thought there was there was a time when you can mourn. I'm gonna have some grace on how people mourn.
Sure.
Right? I'm not gonna try to. I did see some people in the left kind of policing. You can't say this. I'll give you some grace. We can have that conversation later. But I saw a lot of trying to put political points on the board before the man was even, placed into the ground. You know what I'm saying? There was a lot of that going on. And so I found that to be problematic too. Did you? And I know you asking the questions.
No, I did. And I do think that there were opportunists out there, but I'm glad you brought that up, because historically the political act of political violence is sort of a part of a period of political unrest. And so I think we're in that period right now. The disagreement, the level of impact, the level of importance, the stakes of who wins and who loses on these points of disagreement are so big, and has been going on probably for a decade now of this level of contention. So not to place a value one way or the other, but I just want you to see from the eyes of a MAGA Republican. Donald Trump was accused of treason. He had his first 2 years under investigation, whether or not he conspired with Russia to steal the 2016 election. He was impeached twice. He had at least 7 people in his inner circle, including 2 cabinet level people, jailed and bankrupted. He had his home raided. They tried to bankrupt him through 2 civil cases, right? Where the prosecutors at state level set the bond at nearly the very amount that he had left in the bank. He had 91 charges brought against him across local, state, and federal jurisdictions. And then he had 2 credible assassination attempts. And then now a young, charismatic general from his movement is assassinated. They view this as deeper than toxic rhetoric. They see this as existential. They're saying not only are our lives at stake here, and our livelihoods are at stake here, they're jailing us. They're raiding our homes. Roger Stone had his home raided. Rudy Giuliani had his home raided. Again, no value one way or the other. You might hear those names and say, they should have had their homes raided. Fine. I'm just showing the perspective of the right. So then when some people responded, for instance, take President Trump, his initial response was seen as being not within the tradition of American presidents when they're responding to these types of things. Although since then he sort of moderated that and softened his tone and spoke in a more conciliatory way about
Can we
things.
say what that response was? Do you mind? The response was, are you trying to bring America together? And he said, no, I'm not worried about that. The left is this, the left is that.
And so again,
and part of being a statesman is, and all that stuff is real, assassination tips and all that. But to me, part of being a statesman is rising above that moment. And that's why it's an extraordinary position to be in. Maybe most people can't do it. To be a president, you got to try to do it. And that's my issue.
I'm curious in light of what you said, because that's actually kind of eye-opening, specifically for me. One of the things I was trying to reconcile and understand is because I don't like virtue signaling. I didn't know Charlie Kirk. I didn't know much of him. There's been so many people that have lost their lives who are Christians, and I've said nothing about it. A lot of Christians have said nothing about it. Charlie Kirk passes away, and it seemed like every Christian was like, "Hey, you have to say something about this." And I was like, "Wait, what?" I was kind of unclear as to what was the mandate. And some of the pushback that I began to hear from people against Christians and pastors was, you were so vocal about George Floyd. You were so vocal about all these people. Why are you not vocal about Charlie Kirk? And in my mind, I was like, well, that was like that. Those weren't isolated events. There was a narrative, and they all were fitting a narrative. And I mean, obviously they're humans, so you're acknowledging the loss of a human. But I think people were trying to make sure people were aware of what they felt like the narrative was. That's what. So what you're kind of articulating is there's a narrative, a through line that people feel like, hey, Charlie Kirk is not an isolated event, but it's a through line of a consistent feeling of being targeted.
Yeah. And just to go back, the point that I was trying to make is, yeah, I do think there were people on the right, particularly in media, some of the podcasters that have captured conservative audiences that were absolutely sort of taking advantage of this opportunity for clickbait and for to score political points.
Sure.
I just wanted to call out that there was also a lot of people who their response was kind of organic and emotional. Should they have risen higher? For sure. Charlie Kirk's like a son to Donald Trump, right? So I understood his initial emotion, right? Even though you're in the presidency and you're called to a higher level. He's since adjusted. And so that was good to see. But that I just wanted to point out that dichotomy.
The term, fascist has been thrown around from both sides. I've seen Charlie fight that. I've seen Charlie give people that label. I've seen people call Donald Trump a fascist. I've seen people say the left are the fascists. Is it a cycle? Is there truth to this anywhere? Do you guys see, like, why is this a heightened and heavy narrative that's circulating right now?
When it comes to politics, one of the worst things you could call somebody is a fascist, I think, right? Which is forcing people telling people they can live a certain way, can't live another way, forcing kind of uniformity in certain areas. And it's just a very authoritarian point of view. So when you're in a democracy, the worst thing you can call somebody is a fascist. Most people couldn't define it if you gave it to them. So there's one thing I might say is I disagree with a lot of the opinions of the administration. I'm not sure they fit the technical definition of fascism, right?
Okay.
Well, I'm pretty sure they don't, right?
Okay.
And that doesn't mean I agree with them. That just means words have meanings. And so when we throw that stuff around, people are using it. And if you ask them, I guarantee most of them are like, I can't really explain it. I know it's really bad and they're really bad. But we have to watch what we say in that regard. We have to be more artful in how we speak. Because one thing that has happened is we just Nazi, whatever word we can find that's the worst, we're going to use it. But again, words have meanings. Words put certain narratives out there, and we have to be very careful. And if you think they're bad, be more articulate in why you think they're bad and explain it instead of letting these words do it all for you. I think that's one of the issues that we have. We're just looking for the worst word.
That's it.
And we move with that.
You would agree?
That's it. 100%. Like when people, our democracy has survived.
You probably didn't even notice.
Of a war, 4 presidential assassinations, the total collapse of our economy during the Great Depression. It has survived really, contentious elections like the year 2000 and the year 2020. And the reason why so many people around the world admire our democracy, and the reason why our democracy is so long-lived, it's the longest continuous democracy in the world.
Mm-hmm.
It's because our institutions are very, very strong. And our founders founded the country out of revolution, and they designed it so that it couldn't fall in revolution. And so I think we got to give a little credit to the strength and the stability of our democracy, which we take for granted.
Mm-hmm.
But there are hundreds of millions, if not billions, of people around the world who live in fledgling democracies or in authoritarian governments who wish they could be American, who idolize America, who do anything to get to this place. We see it with our immigration.
Mm-hmm.
And they live vicariously through the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to be aware of that. So when we start talking like, hey, don't look to us, our democracy is fragile too, right? What is that going to do for democracy, the movement of democracy around the world?
Historically, though, again, I mean, you would know better than me, but in my mind, I would imagine a democracy is where the left and the right, the Democrats or the Republicans, understand the process and understand, like, well, everyone has an opportunity to have a voice, to have to like, it's a dance. But it feels more as of late that both sides are like, no, our way is the way.
Mm-hmm.
Your way is not the way. Is that democracy? Like, it seems to undermine democracy in some sense.
Well, I think you can have democracy with people having very strong disagreements and saying, y'all don't know anything.
Okay.
The question is, do you still maintain the process?
Okay.
And so when the process starts falling away, I can say, yeah, you don't, everything you say is wrong, Lecrae.
Mm-hmm.
But if I then say you can't vote and I need to censor you, now we're getting to the point where it's not democratic. And I may be less with Corey on how secure everything is. I mean, I have over the past few years seen an expansion of executive power.
Mm-hmm.
There are some things that have been happening within this administration that I feel are anti-democratic. Even when we look at what's happening with Jimmy Fallon recently.
Jimmy Kimmel.
Sorry, Jimmy Fallon. Jimmy Kimmel. To me, that's not a place where the government needs to step in and push one way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that does say, hey, I'm not just going to trust our democracies. Okay. I need to say, hold up. That's not supposed to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, that's a violation of the process, not to the extent where I would say it's certainly fascism, because fascism would handle that totally differently, right? They would have just handed them over, right?
Yeah.
It's a whole different thing, but it's worth concern.
Right.
So I do have serious concerns about those expansions. I have concern about Congress really not doing much at all and handing everything to the courts and to the presidency. I don't feel that sense of security. I have a concern, but it doesn't go into saying that, we become authoritarian right now.
Well, Tucker Carlson said that hate speech laws are worthy of civil disobedience. And then we did see Jimmy Kimmel, just lose his show. Obviously, it's not as if the president himself said, we're canceling you. But there are powers and infrastructures in place.
He kind of did.
I mean,
but yeah.
But through infrastructures, it happened. Yeah. I guess is what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
What, from somebody on the right, like, what do you say to that?
I mean, the power of the executive, the legislative, and the judiciary expand and contrast. That's a democracy. So it may expand now, and then he'll lose the midterms, or maybe Democrats win in 2028, and that's a correction that's made. Then it shifts back. Abraham Lincoln suspended habeas corpus. Presidents, each of these branches of government are equal. They're co-equal. And so they're all going to push the envelope as to what authority they have. And the other branches are going to push back.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, the right has all of the power. And so they're going to keep pushing. When they lose an election, that pendulum will swing. That's just part of That's part of being in a democracy.
Would you say, because I guess we're seeing a lot of people voice their feelings in the media and lose their jobs, right?
Yeah.
We saw someone from I think it was a Phoenix news reporter, MSNBC. Like, we're seeing people voice their perspectives and opinions and lose their job, or get arrested. I guess, what does that say about free speech in this era that we're in right now?
Look, I think the media has been a captured industry for some time now. Very far left, very unfair to Republicans. When Donald Trump won the election, it coincided with new media bosses coming in. Like, for instance, Jeff Bezos buying the Washington Post. NBC was going through new leadership. CBS was going through a merger, right? So like all of this is happening at the same time. In addition to that, traditional media, we're sitting here on a podcast, traditional media is losing money. Late night television is losing like $400 million per year per show. So Jimmy Kimmel wasn't making ABC money. So this is a good opportunity for them to make their shift in late night television. So I think, yes, the White House is going to press. When you're in power, and Justin, you know this, when you're in power, you're the governor or you're a mayor or you're the president, you don't have to direct something. There's people in place. If they see something being done unfairly to you or for that will not advantage you politically, they'll act. And so you're going to get the power of the presidency, even if he doesn't direct it himself. And those executives that are making decisions, they're making market decisions, but they're also taking into consideration their relationship with the administration and having access to the administration for news purposes, right? So it doesn't help if in Coca-Cola, if Coca-Cola says, hey, if you can't read the room and you're an executive at Coca-Cola, you're probably going to be let go. Jimmy Kimmel was clearly not reading the room at ABC when he said what he said. And so he was let go.
Sound like you want to respond.
Yeah, I just think that's a lot of speculation on what was going to happen to Kimmel. And I just don't think it justifies what happened. So when your best argument is the circumstances are bad and they're bad too, it's just not a defense, right? None of that justifies. So what Kimmel said was wrong. He's a comedian. He basically comes in and insinuates that the person who tried to assassinate Kirk was MAGA, which based on everything that's come out, that's just not true. There's nothing that says that that's true. So that was wrong. It doesn't justify the government stepping in and pushing for him to get fired or using other things. So we can assume or speculate as to what would happen to him based on the industry. But when we're talking about the Constitution and what a presidency or an executive branch should be doing and shouldn't be doing, that's outside the lane. And just because, there's some administrations have pushed a little before, when you clearly go outside of the Constitution, I can't take that and just say, well, it kind of happens, because we can say that all the way until
it's not outside the Constitution.
Broken. If it's free speech.
No, but if the Federal Communications Commission says that was blatantly wrong, right? This guy was not MAGA.
People say, where does the Constitution say that you can't say something that's wrong?
But there's been a rash of suits against CBS, against CNN, for saying things that weren't right on the air.
And that's meant to be handled by the judiciary in those cases.
Understood.
Not by the
I think the executives at ABC felt like, hey, you got a show that's losing $400 million a year. I'm not interested in taking on that risk right now. I mean, you just have to read the room. Like, this is not a time.
I'm just saying that's a speculation.
No, it's a speculation. But I also think it's a speculation that ABC would not have let Jimmy Kimmel go. Well, I don't think they let him go or whatever they're doing with him, right? Canceled the show.
But the FCC wasn't silent.
No, I'm saying even if the FCC was silent, I think ABC would have let him go. In the current climate, The current media climate and with the changing of leadership, with the lawsuits that have happened, huge lawsuits that have happened, in the wake of these political debates and people saying things without fact. I don't think Jimmy Kimmel would have survived. We just lost
I don't know if he's gone yet. I know he's been suspended.
But we just lost a late night host, right?
Stephen Colbert.
I just think the climate is such that, first of all, late night is going away. I think he just accelerated his exit.
So you would agree if the administration tipped the balance or weighed into it, that would be wrong?
No, not necessarily. I think they're challenging. Now, look, ABC, for instance, the executives made that decision, right? They didn't force ABC but I get it. They put the pressure on it. But my point is, there's a judiciary. If you feel like this is undue influence, you have recourse. That's democracy.
Now, this is interesting because I think what's happening here in a very civil way happens outside in a way more intense way, right? Where there are arguments and justifications and like, hey, you're not seeing it clearly. No, clearly you're not seeing it clearly. Mm-hmm. This is what this is. This is what that is. And I guess, I take both of you as individuals who are okay with saying, well, maybe I'm not seeing it clearly. There's been instances where we've heard people on the right and the left, who've said, made statements that were clearly like, no, that's not true. Mm-hmm. Right. But I haven't heard a lot of people from their particular camps come out and condemn the wrongness that happened. Why is that? Like, why is there a hesitancy to condemn someone from your party's wrong vantage point? Like, what is that about?
Yeah. Two things. As I said before, there's a scoreboard. Mm-hmm. So everybody's eyes are on the scoreboard that says who has the advantage right now. If somebody on my side does something wrong and I call them out and then we get 4 points taken away, now I done hurt my side. Mm. Or my tribe just goes off on me and cancels me, and now I'm no longer at the table. Now, as a Christian, I can't really take those things into consideration. Mm-hmm. I've got to speak the truth in those situations, and I got to hold people accountable, especially on my side. Mm-hmm. But I think that's what keeps people from doing it. If my side represents justice, why would I call out my side and then hurt our cause? I think that's the calculus that people make when making those decisions.
Doesn't that feel irresponsible?
I would think it is. It's understandable in the way that the reward and punishment mechanisms are set up in politics. For a Christian, it's unfaithful, is what I'm getting at. Yeah.
Okay. And I believe Justin is at the vanguard of that issue right there. Of why people don't sort of hold their own side accountable, mm-hmm. and what all those mechanisms is. One thing to say, hey, you need to hold your side accountable. But to talk about the levers that people are considering, mm-hmm. Before they make a decision to speak out on their own side or to hold someone accountable, I don't really hear anyone else talking about that. And I think there needs to be tools, almost like when you're helping a kid navigate bullying in at school. Mm-hmm. It's one thing to say, stand up for yourself, right? Yeah. But you got to give that kid tools. Like, what do they do, right? Mm. Can they tell the teacher, well, what happens if it's just me and him in the hallway? Or, right, you got to give them tools to deal with that. And I think a lot of Christians, this is a call to listen to what Justin is saying on these issues, because he's articulating what those levers are and through like Church Politics podcast, providing you with tools to actually deal with them.
Actually, in speaking of Christians, like we kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, but like it feels like, evangelical Christianity, specifically over the last few years, within this decade, is growing stronger, right? Like there's a stronger entanglement with evangelical Christians and the conservative right? I don't want to say evangelical Christianity is growing stronger. The entanglement between the conservative right and evangelical Christianity is stronger. I mean, obviously the the religious right happened years ago, and this has been an ongoing process. But in my lifetime, I've never felt more like, if you don't think this way politically, you're not an authentic Christian. Like, I don't think that pressure, I've never felt that pressure as much as it's been consistent now. And I guess I'm curious, like, there may be positives to that. There may be shortcomings. I think of Constantinianism, when it was like Christianity was the law of the land. There were some good things about that. There were some bad things about that. I guess along those kind of lines, like, is this a bad thing, or is it a good thing? Is it what would you say in light of this?
I'm the wrong person to ask but I'm hearing it and I'm starting to wonder what I'm missing. The being on the right, I've been told by donors, don't talk about that. Talk about faith. Don't talk about issues like abortion and LGBTQ causes. I just don't support anyone that will do that. I've actually heard those things.
Wow.
I've heard activists tell me, I like that guy until I heard him say a scripture. So I think there's a libertarian thread in on the right that is socially liberal and fiscally conservative. And I think those guys have the sway of things on the right. If you're a candidate on the right, I think Trump and MAGA, Trump's movement has been much more open with its relationship with the religious right than, say, what happens in 98% of the rest of the right. So, and this is one reason why it took a long time before anyone on the right would even speak up about child transgenderism or children going through transgender operations. I mean, how long did it take? It wasn't until Donald Trump ran for re-election that you even heard that come up as a cause. And it's because there's a real pressure on the right not to be religious right.
I would say I think there's been a vibe shift. I think since this second time that Trump gets in office, things have changed a little bit. You see, I want to say that progressives had the culture in like a chokehold, right? They controlled entertainment, all those things. They controlled the universities. In this second sweep, you see that kind of changing, and partially because of people like Charlie Kirk, who goes into universities which were captured by progressivism and debates them on their turf about certain issues with these young people. And he starts to turn young people in college were so far from being conservative, it wasn't even close. The numbers weren't even close. Charlie Kirk, one of the things he did, you like him or don't like him, you can say it's good or bad, is he goes in there and he starts to shift that to where I don't know if Trump wins without the young vote that he got this time. Part of that is due to Turning Point USA. So I do think there's been a vibe shift. And because of that vibe shift, there's a new confidence among a lot of white evangelicals. Like, you need to get on here, or, you know what I'm saying? Are you really missing the wave? And that's what I've seen in the last year and a half, is that shift to say, no, now we're in the driver's seat of culture.
Yeah.
So we might have had the presidency or the Senate. Now the culture is turning our way. You see the numbers on trans identity, all those things. And that's what I think is one of the big differences at this very moment.
So, I guess, and obviously there's silos everywhere. And I guess, depending on what strand of Christianity you're looking at, or lens you're looking through, or strand of Republican you're navigating. I think I was as unaware until Charlie Kirk passed away how strongly the religious right felt, and to where it was kind of like I couldn't see what was politically Republican versus religiously Republican in some of the commentary that was being made. And so that's what made me want to ask that question. I guess, yeah, I don't know if there's thoughts. Do you feel like he incited or added anything to that movement?
I think he added,
like in his death. I'm also wondering too.
I think he added young people into that movement. I think his death is going to add energy to it, for better or worse. That's certain. One of the things it seems like you're getting at is just the meshing between Republicanism or, ideological conservatism and white evangelicalism in general. And that's there. I mean, it is hard to tell the difference. And I think from a standpoint of Christian nationalism, that's the point, right? Is to have that be a mess to where you can't really see the difference. Now, here and there, you hear Trump talk about abortion here and there. There's some differences there. But in general, I think the point is for it to be very closely connected, which I don't see, obviously, as a good thing, even on the issues I agree on, right? I think this is still democracy. My Muslim neighbor or my atheist neighbor should have just as much of a say as I do.
Absolutely.
And that opinion should be respected, even if I don't think it should win the day.
Yeah. There's a lot of commentary, some from Christians, some not in the Christian community. Like the Utah governor said this is a watershed moment, right? He said, this is a turning point in the nation's history. Declaration of Independence, Civil War, Great Depression, 9/11, COVID, like, what does that statement mean? I'm curious, what do you think he meant? But then is there any validity to that from y'all's perspective?
I think there's some validity. It's yet to be seen.
Okay.
So you come back to me in a year, we'll know, for sure. But it just looks like with the advancement of conservatism he made in certain areas, came a real attachment to him. And when you take somebody who people see as their leader, it radicalizes them, it energizes them in many instances, not always, but in many instances, and they come back harder. And so I think it's a turning point in that, not that it made things better in any way, but it took the polarization to a higher level. And we'll see how that, shakes out.
What do you think?
Yeah, and, I think it was the shock of seeing the video, because remember, not long ago, there was some political assassinations in Minnesota with some state legislators, right? But we didn't see it. It wasn't vivid for us. And so this was very, very shocking and vivid and riveting. It was in front of 2,000 people. And a lot of people who did not follow Charlie Kirk before were like, well, who is this guy standing in front of 2,000 people? And why is he a target for political assassination? I was telling Justin last week, I was maybe a month before Charlie Kirk was assassinated. I was sitting up in bed, surfing through YouTube. And I get to this Turning Point video. I click on it, and it's a Turning Point conference in Hungary. Right, so I'm like, what? It had the president of Hungary and presidents from surrounding countries there. And I was like, I had no idea that this was the reach of Turning Point, that people were setting up their own satellites in Europe and probably in other places. We saw the large protest in England, 3 million people in South Korea. We are Charlie Kirk. And so I think it has had a very big impact. I think a lot of that has to do with how visible it was, right? It's the same impact that the civil rights television had on the civil rights movement. It's like we're seeing it. It had more of a effect on people.
I was in Zimbabwe when it occurred, and it was on every television screen everywhere in Zimbabwe.
Wow.
And so I'm curious from your vantage point, like, how do you think other countries are viewing America right now? Like, not just in light of this incident, but just in general with our politics, our country. Like, how do you think other countries view America? Is it opportunistic? Is it still, like you were mentioning, like they still want this democracy that we have? Like, what do you think they're thinking?
Maybe you know better. I mean, you travel far more than I do and might have an international sense.
I see it more as like the U.S. is the parent And it's been a unipolar world since 1991, where just the U.S. was the only world power.
Mm-hmm.
And you had the Dream Team, and you had Obama, and you had all these things that America was projecting across the world, and everyone wanted to be America. But I think now our kids are teenagers and they see our flaws. I'm one of these people who don't think America is diminishing. I just think everyone else is growing up. And Russia, for instance, in 1991, there was no Russia. Soviet Union collapsed. There was no China. You didn't say China until 2015.
Mm.
There was no European Union until the 2000s. They were all individual countries. India, right, just started asserting itself and sending out its best and brightest to operate in the West. And we're seeing Indians run technology and run medicine and stuff like that. And so I think it's a growing up of the rest of the world. And we should applaud ourselves. America did a good job as the single world power. No other world power in the history of the world has nurtured that kind of growth outside of itself. And so I think it's a good thing. Now, how are they interpreting it? Probably like a teenager. Like my mom ain't what I thought she was. My dad ain't what I thought he was. Rebellious a little bit. So, yeah.
I just think the internal strife is of our own doing.
For sure.
And I think people can see it. And so it's not about, I don't see it as much as about them growing up or us being a parent. I see it as it being apparent that there's something going on here that makes these United States seem even less united than before. And when you hear about some of the advances or expansions, again, of executive power, those who are really paying attention have to say, this is different. I see this. I do see this as a different moment. Not necessarily catastrophic, doesn't have to be there, but of great concern. And those who are paying attention, I think, can see that concern.
And see, I think you point to a good thing. The fact is that they looked at America through a lens that was probably not realistic during that period of time where we were the sole superpower. And even before, when it was either Soviet Union or America, they probably looked at us in a way that was rosy and naive. But we had the same political strife during those times. I mean, Reagan was shot at. We had a decade in our country where 5 major leaders were shot down, right? King, Kennedy, Kennedy's brother, ex, Medgar Evers. So at least 5. We've been here before. We've had a civil war where 600,000 people died, and 9 states decided they wanted to go and form their own country. They set up relationships with other countries in trade and alliances. And they had their own constitution and Congress. So we've been here before. That's the brilliance of America. Is the resilience of this democratic experiment. And even if I grant what you're saying, and I actually do, I grant that this is an expansion of executive power. I just think the Constitution allows for that. And also our political process allows for it. And it'll be corrected if that's not what the American people want. It may be what they want, and in which case it won't be corrected. And so to me, I just feel like the rest of the world is no longer seeing America as through rose-colored glasses, right? Yeah. They see it as, okay, wow, I didn't realize they just like we are. And that's what you learn when you become a young adult, is that your parents were just young people trying to do their best. And now when you get to that point of maturity where you can recognize that your parents were just trying to do their best and they were human, you probably got that after a phase of resentment and disappointment that they weren't who you thought they were. And I think that's where the world is today.
There's 2 perspectives that I hear. There's a perspective of a growing fear, right? Growing fear because of other nations, and we'll be cannibalized, and there's just a fear that we will become, I don't know, in some senses like the slaves of another nation, right? And then there's a fear of us, you know, imploding on ourselves, and being our own detriment. I'm curious, do you feel, is there any credence to any of those perspectives, or how would you quell people's fears in those particular vantage points?
I mean, I think there's potential to implode if we don't have leadership that steps up and unifies in ways that I saw, the governor of Utah doing, Spencer Cox, right? Mm-hmm. Coming in and saying, hey, I'm going to give you the facts. I'm going to, I'm going to lay it down the way that it is, but I'm going to do it in a way, I'm going to frame it in a way that does give us an opportunity to see our joint interest in this project. Mm-hmm. We need leaders who are going to show our joint interest in this democratic experience. Mm. We need the church to be able to do that. And that's why I said this was an opportunity. This assassination was an opportunity to provide moral clarity in tragedy. And in so many ways, we failed because we had other ideological motives and other motives that were behind what we're doing. Mm-hmm. That's the leadership we need. It can happen. I'm prayerful that leadership starts to step up and change the narrative so that we can see our common interest.
Mm. Absolutely. I mean, we've been in a multipolar world before where there were other nations that were strong. That's the hope of it. The fear is that, when the last time we had that, we went into a world war, right? The First World War. But I think we've learned from that. I think you could see the diplomacy. You also can see the power jockeying, right? Mm-hmm. China's trying to jockey for a position. Russia's jockeying for a position. And the U.S. is jockeying for position. And so I think when the dust settles, I'm hopeful that we won't be going into another world war. Hmm.
Is there a place for Christians to be nationalists? Like, we have a civic responsibility to care for, as a Christian, we have a kingdom responsibility to care for the land that we live in. Mm-hmm. I think Jeremiah tells us to seek the peace of the city. Where's the line between idolatry, maybe, or caring too much, or like, is there room for nationalism and Christianity?
I think there's room for loving your country. And to me, what loving your country means is trying to make it better, right? Not just saying how great we are today and how exceptional we are, but to say we have great ideals and I want to hold us to those ideals, right? So that's the first thing. That's a type of care for country and love of country that I can deal with. Also to say, hey, when it does come to economic issues, we can't help nobody if we don't help ourselves, right? So we do have to look and say, how do we make sure that our workers are taken care of? Now, where do we go over the line? If somehow we denigrate others, or if somehow we're violating the rights of others to get what we need. We've done that in the past, not always, but that's why I think you cross the line when you're denigrating others, trying to bring them down, or violating them to get your luxuries and wealth and all those things. That's where it goes too far.
Yeah. And I would say, Bishop Monroe Saunders used to say, we have to be humans, but we do not have to be earthlings. And, we're not of this world. And so we have to have a constant reminder that we are aliens and sojourners in this world, that this is not our home. And so while I'm a nationalist, like I am an American. I love this country. I love that, my people were brought here, regardless of the circumstances. I love how strong my people were in this country and what we did to help America help those founders know what they actually wrote down meant when they said all men are created equal, and that we probably wouldn't have had the pressure and accountability on Abe Lincoln, the first Republican president, if the first Black Republican, Frederick Douglass, wasn't in his ear saying, you have to do this. And so I love my country. I'm a patriot. And I don't want another country to be more powerful or more successful than America. In that sense, I'm competitive. And that's what I mean. And I think what most people mean when they say they are a nationalist. But I'm not going to let that get in the way of my citizenship in heaven. So I am first a citizen of heaven. And what I was saying earlier, the Constitution allows for this, and our Constitution also allows for us to move away from those original principles. And if we're ever in a place where I feel like I can't be Christian, I can't live out my faith, I'm a Christian first, not an American first. I think some people get that mixed up by, first of all, by blurring it, and second of all, by just forgetting that you are not just a Christian in the sense that you are a member of the Rotary Club, but you're a Christian in the sense that your citizenship is in heaven.
Final thoughts for a world out there who is looking for clarity in the midst of the polarization and the division, specifically like Christians. I mean, you've kind of said like we missed a moment, but I'm just curious, like, what do you give people in this time period? Like, is there a I don't know, something that you would want them to hold on to in the midst of it all, or a perspective that you want them to process as they're running to their sides of the corner?
How you treat your political and cultural opponents in time of tragedy says a lot about your character. If I can somehow not be all about myself and my side in a time of tragedy, once that tragedy's over, I might actually have an opportunity to persuade you. And I'll give you an example. 1972, George Wallace, who is the Alabama governor, starched segregationist. I mean, so many policies, so many things he did to hurt black people, get shot. Representative Shirley Chisholm, the first black female congresswoman, goes to his hospital during her campaign and sits with him, tells him, I wouldn't want this to happen. And this is somebody who would call her the N-words. This is somebody who would not want her to even be able to run for office or vote. Let's be very clear. Goes to his hospital, sits down with him, tells him that she's sorry this happened to him, has a conversation with him, acknowledges their differences, their real differences, and says, you know what? I actually think you're right about how corporations have taken over the government and how the government isn't responsive to the people. So not only did she sit with this person who hated her, she had actually listened to what he was saying, not just the bad things, but also knew even how bad he is, there's something he was saying that made sense. Most of us haven't done that with our opponents. After this happens, once the campaign is done, George Wallace goes on a tour where he's apologizing to black people, apologizing for many of the things that he had done.
Wow.
Is what Shirley Chisholm did in that moment more powerful than our defense that we put up in the last few days? What's more powerful? And so I would just remember that example of the power of grace and having character even in those tragic moments.
That's the mic drop, man. That was great, man.
That was powerful. I want to personally say, every time you both have been here, it has blessed me. Like I have made mental leaps just in this conversation. Like clarity has become, there's been more clarity in light of you discussing this. And so I know plenty of people be blessed by it. I'm very grateful for y'all and also grateful for the civility. I don't know when or where we began to go at fisticuffs because of our political views. I mean, obviously it's a historical thing, but as you said, we're Christians first. And yeah, I greatly appreciate your words and thank y'all both for being here, man.
Thanks for having us, man. Thanks for what you do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
This is The Deep End with Lecrae.
What's going on, everybody? It's Lecrae, and welcome to The Workshop. The Workshop is a place
where you guys can understand my thought process. You guys are going to be able to unpack and dig into some of the old albums, some of the last several albums that I've done. And on top of that, it's a place where you're going to hear new music and some surprises. Make sure you stay tapped in. Let's build together. See you on the other side.
Mr. Boots.
It's okay. I'll just grab the backup sticks.
Backup sticks? How do you afford that, money bags?
The lowest prices of any national grocery store.